Okay, folks. So in the next few videos, I'm going to be talking about web servlets and the JSP page and so on and so forth. But before I get into any of that, I want to go ahead and talk a little bit about the flow of what's happening, and so on and so forth. So we have a few things. We have the user. We have the web application. And then we have the database. Okay, so user, database. All right. Within the web application, we have three major things. We have JSP. We have JSP, then we have servlets. We then have the JDBC. Okay. So we actually do have a couple different flows here that I'll have to talk about. But scenario one. Scenario one. The user will always access the JSP pages first. And the first JSP page that's accessed is generally called the index. Or default or whatever. And I'll show you where to define that at the very end or in the beginning of the next video. Okay. So the user accesses the index. The index asks for some kind of input. If I just bring up any kind of page, so this is Google's index. I can type in something. I can click on 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 different buttons or links. This is all the index page. Without this page, you can't, without these kinds of inputs, you'll never be able to get off this Google page, assuming you don't know what to type in up here in the URL bar. So the index, or the first page, asks for some kind of input. That input is then sent to the servlets. Now, whether you have one servlet that handles all of this or multiple servlets handling, each individual JSP page on a one-to-one basis, it's up to you. I'll kind of talk about what each one is and the benefits of them, possibly in the next video, but definitely within the next few. So the servlets, we're calling the servlets using a form of some kind. In order for these two pages to talk, we need a form. And then that servlet in the first scenario calls to the JDBC. Now remember, in your JDBC you have your DAOs, BOs, and models. The JDBC will access the database. The database will send something back, and the JDBC will send it to the servlets. The servlets will then take that information and send it back to the JSP page through redirects and forwards. Now, this is one case. And this case is the error messages. So if you have errors, or search results, this is where it gets sent back to the same page. You need to display either your errors or search results. Okay, so in this first flow, the user inputs something into the JSP page, the servlet sends that search query to the JDBC. The JDBC gets it back from the database, sends it to the servlets and the index, and then the servlet displays it on, and then the servlet sends it to the JSP page to be displayed. And we'll talk about how this sending back and forth between the JSP page and the servlet is done. Okay. The second flow that could happen is the servlet sends you to an entirely new JSP page. And we're going to call this page 2 in black. Possibly in black. Page 2 will generally ask for some kind of input from the user, and then once again that input is sent to my servlets, and then it's the same flow all over again. You either get sent back to, it's sent to the servlets, to the JDBC, to the database, and then back again. And be aware, it could always be sent back the other direction. So I could, in the second page, enter something, it gets sent to the servlet recognizes that it's an error, so it sends it back to the page. Or I could go down to the JDBC level, recognize that it's an error, and send it back up. I could go all the way down to the database, and that gives me a constraint issue. It tells me there's an error. All these different places is where we could find an error. And you can even find them on the same JSP page. But that's more of a technicality than what's happening here. And I'll show you those in a second. Or I'll show you those when we get to it in the video over HTML and so on and so forth. But aside from going to a new page, so we start with index, we go through the loop, we either end up back at the index or a new page, and then we go through the loop again, over and over and over, until we decide to go to a different page. And hopefully spell things right. Okay, so that's going to be it for this video that just talks about the flow of how things happen. In the next video, I will talk I will talk about how we connect the JSP and the servlets, as well as the benefits of having one servlet over many servlets. And then hopefully we'll get into how to start with your JSP page.